Zelensky Bad News. According to Shoigu, Putin receives twice daily briefings on the war in Ukraine. Putin listens in detail to updates twice a day from the military command on the status of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. TASS, a pro-Kremlin news agency, and Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu are the sources. According to Shoigu, Putin listens to the detail of the command of the joint group, as well as individual colonels and commanders. In detail on all fronts, the quote says. Extra information. Shoigu also claims that Russia refrained and keeps refraining from using cluster munitions against Ukraine. However, if the United States supplies such shells to Ukraine, the Russian armed forces will be forced to use similar means of destruction against the armed forces of Ukraine. Background. The United States has announced that it will provide Ukraine with an additional $800 million in military aid, which will include cluster munitions in particular. The United States military also claims that their cluster bombs have a dud rate of 2.35% or less. And these cluster munitions are safer for civilians than the ones Russia is using in their conflict with Ukraine. For instance, in March of 2022, at least 6 people were killed when Russian troops fired cluster bombs at the village of Kazacha Lopan in Kharkiv Oblast. The press is its own frontline. In other words, back Ukrainska Pravda or sign up to be a patron. The Justice Department reversed course on Tuesday and said that Trump can be held personally liable for his comments about the woman who accused him of rape, despite the fact that the department had previously said that Trump was immune from legal consequences due to his position as president. The Justice Department has informed the judge in Manhattan Federal Court that it no longer has a sufficient basis to conclude that President Trump was motivated in his statements about columnist E. Jean Carroll's claims by anything other than a trivial desire to serve the United States. The department previously agreed with Trump's lawyers that the Westfall Act, which gives federal employees absolute immunity from lawsuits brought over conduct occurring within the scope of employment, shielded Trump from the lawsuit. After hearing testimony that Trump sexually assaulted Carroll in 1996 at the Bergdorf Goodman store in Midtown Manhattan and then defamed her last fall with comments he made about her and her claims, a jury awarded Carroll $5 million in damages in May. The jury found Trump guilty of sexually abusing Carroll but found her claim of rape to be without merit. After New York State temporarily allowed victims of sexual abuse to file civil claims for attacks that occurred even decades earlier, Carroll filed suit in November, leading to the current trial. U.S. attorneys cited the jury's verdict, Trump's deposition from October, and Carroll's claims that Trump defamed her again in comments he made during a CNN town hall the day after the verdict in their letter to Trump. The letter provides new evidence in Carroll's original defamation lawsuit, which had been put on hold while appeals were made regarding whether Trump could be held liable for statements he made while in office. The original claims stem from comments Trump made in 2019 following Carroll's initial publicization of her claims of sexual assault by Trump in a memoir, and their trial is set to begin in January 2020. Robbie Kaplan, who represents Carroll, said the DOJ's submission was one of the last obstacles to bringing the case to trial and he was glad to see it go. She released a statement expressing gratitude that the DOJ had changed its mind. To quote our attorneys, "We have always believed that Donald Trump made his defamatory statements about our client in June 2019 out of personal animus, ill will, and spite, and not as President of the United States." There was no immediate response from Trump's legal team. Carroll's attorneys filed papers earlier in the day disputing a counterclaim made by Trump's attorneys in their defamation lawsuit, which claimed that Carroll had defamed him with comments she made following the May verdict, in part by repeating statements that he had raped her. Nothing more than his latest attempt to spin his loss at trial, the attorneys wrote of the counterclaim. They claimed that if this had been a criminal claim, Trump would have to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life because the sexual abuse for which he was found liable was equivalent to rape under some criminal statutes. Unless the victim comes forward publicly, as Carol has done, the Associated Press does not typically identify those who claim to have been sexually assaulted.